And now, for the week of May 22nd, Adobe Photoshop TV is on the air.
Welcome to Adobe Photoshop TV from the National Association of Photoshop Professionals. And here's your hosts, the Photoshop guys, Scott Kelby, Dave Cross, and Matt Plaskowski.
Welcome to another lackadaisical episode of Adobe Photoshop TV, brought to you by the National Association of Photoshop Professionals, people who bring you Photoshop User Magazine.
This week's episode is brought to you by DLO, CDW, iStockPhoto.com, Yellow Machine, and PeachPit.com.
All right, and iStockPhoto.com.
Yes, sir.
And any other three-letter acronym you can possibly think of. CIA, FBI, LSD, UPS. Okay, welcome, everybody. My name is Scott Kelby, and joining me here in the set is Mr. Dave Cross.
Welcome, everyone, again.
Proudly representing Canada once again.
As always.
And also from Hillsborough County, Florida, Mr. Matt Plaskowski.
Proudly representing Hillsborough County, Florida.
Very, very proud. Well, we have got another great show put together for you with tons and tons of tutorials and tips and giveaways and all kinds of trivia and stuff. But we're going to start things off this week with a tip from Mr. Matt Plaskowski.
Well, thank you, guys. So this week, I actually got the idea for this tip off of one of the NAT member forums, but it comes out to be a really cool tutorial. It's one of those things that I don't think Adobe really intended the tool to be used this way, but it's always fun when you look at tools to see how you can use them in ways that they probably weren't created for. So what we're going to do...
It's always nice to make the engineers angry.
Yes, exactly. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you how to create a multi-stroked object. And I have an example of it here, and let me zoom in and I'll show you the edges of it. If you take a look at this image right here, see the edges? If you picture this circular oval in the middle, and then we have a black stroke and a white stroke and a black stroke and all kinds of strokes here. Well, I actually faked it, and I'm going to show you the hard way to do it. Let's open up this layer group here.
Yeah, I love the hard way.
The hard way to do it is to create that center object. Okay, I'll hide all these layers here. Create that central object. So I got the first one, and then you create an oval that's a little bit larger and a little bit larger and a little bit larger until you have all these kind of a faked multi-stroked object. But the problem is, if you ever want to go try to do that on another object, you have to recreate everything over and over again. So I'll show you a little trick here. Let's go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this oval layer, and let's get rid of I've already added it to this one here. So let's get rid of that. We'll hide that one. So we've got this middle oval in the center. What I'm going to do is go to the bottom of the layers palette here and add a stroke layer style to it. Now, first thing I want to do is change fill type from color to gradient. And in the gradient picker, I'm going to choose the black and white gradient. Now, I'm going to double click on that, and let's actually open up the gradient editor here. And here's where we're going to have to do a little bit of work, okay? First thing we want to do is take this white slider and move it all the way over here. Now you can see we get a gradient that goes from black to white. Well, I'm going to add another gradient stop right here. Just click and double click and make that a black color here. And then watch what happens when I start to move this over on top of the white one. See how it doesn't really gradiate anymore? It's a very harsh transition from black to white. So what you do is just adjust these to the size that you want that. So I want that to be a smaller one. Now I'm going to add another stop here, and we'll leave it at white, but then I want it to go from white to black. So you add another stop, and these are just going to be black and white stops for this example. So we'll add a black one here, and see how we move that over. And now we have a black little non-gradation again. Now, let's say we want to do a larger one here. So I'll add a stop over here and then one right next to it. And remember, since we're going to stay black here, we want to move to white. So I'll change this one to white. Click OK. Move that one just over the black stop. And now let's add another black one. Actually, we're going to move these over. I want to make it really large there. OK, now let's add another white stop here. Add another black stop. So all you're doing is just clicking in that empty area, and you can add more color stops. So that's the effect we're looking for. If you see, we go from black to white to black to white and black again. This is going to be the basis of our multiple stroke here. And all you got to do is just position these stops right on top of each other. So once you get yours to look like that, click OK. And now, right now, if you look at the stroke around this, it doesn't look like what you're expecting it to. But if you change the style from linear to shape burst, and then start adjusting the size here, watch what happens. See how we get that multi stroke outline around here. If I move that out of the
pretty
side,
slick, Mr.
check it out.
Klaskowski.
Thank you. I already had some type on top of there, but just change it, and all you got to do is you can adjust the size setting here, and you can change it to your liking. When you're done, you can press OK, and now I've got the multi-stroked object here. What's even nicer about it is, let's say I go and I create another one. Let's just move this off to the side here. I go and create another one up here. You can see it automatically adds it up there. And you can just go to your style icon if you ever wanted to take it away. Just click that little red slash, or double click and go in there and edit. And to finish it up, all you'd want to do is maybe just drop the size setting down for this one because it's a lot smaller of an object. So you can recreate it, save it all over the place, and you've got your own multi-stroke layer style.
Very cool. Very nice.
nice.
I've never seen that done before.
Really?
The one thing I didn't like about that is that I didn't think of it first. Very, very cool. He's doing that. I'm going, hey, this is cool. Well done, Mr. Klaskowski. You never know these young kids with their love beads and their long hair. All right. Thank you very much, Matt. All right.
You're very welcome.
We are going to turn things over to Mr. Cross. He brought a very cool thing as well.
Well, I must say, my tutorial really pales in comparison to what Matt does, because I'm going to start with a very pale photo. That was a little pun there. Sorry. Based on our growing trend of showing you little restoration tips, here's a very typical problem with old photos is they're very, very faded out. Almost anything you try to do, you just haven't got much to work with. Well, this is about the simplest way in the world to do it. All you have to do, here's my background layer. I'm just going to press Command or Control J to duplicate, and then change the blend mode to multiply. And look at the difference if I turn this on off. It's a little bit darker. That's pretty cool. Well, if we duplicate again, it doesn't just duplicate the layer, it duplicates the facts in multiply mode. So now I've got two layers, and look at the difference before and after. So most of this photo is looking pretty good, but the top part still looks to me like it could use a little help. So I'm just going to take my lasso tool and just do a very kind of rough selection of the top portion. I want to feather it quite a bit, though, because I want it to blend in. So I'm going to put a pretty high amount in here.
And what does feathering do, by
Feathering
the way,
softens the edge of your
we
selection.
have some people that have
That's
never
correct.
used
Good
feathering
point,
before.
because that just makes a soft edge. And you'll see when I duplicate it, if I show you just that layer, you'll see that it has a very nice soft edge once again. So look at the difference now we're multiplying just the top part. And let's duplicate that again. So look at our layers palette. We end up with, here's our original photo, and just by duplicating and multiplying. And the key to this, what makes it so cool, is you don't have to duplicate the whole photo. If they look at our tree, for example, over here, I might say, you know, that also needs a bit of help. So I could once again make a selection, feather that, maybe not as much in this case, and then duplicate that, and it will multiply once again. So you can keep building on this as much as you want, just selecting little parts of the photo, using multiply, and then once you're finished, at the very end, of course, you would flatten this whole thing down to get to a nice after photo that takes away all that paleness and gives you a nice full image at the end. I think it's worth mentioning that although I was using an old faded photo there, of course the same principle and the same technique works if you have just a photo that's really overexposed and you have no detail. You can use exactly the same technique to bring back some great detail.
Well, thank you, Dave. That really restores my faith. Sorry. Okay, hey.
The show of puns.
I know we luckily have a lot of viewers in international markets, and I'm doing a couple of Adobe Live events in Europe I want to invite you to. If you're in Sweden, I'm going to be there on, let's see, May 31st for Adobe Live in Stockholm, Sweden. So if you're there, I'll be teaching some sessions on digital photography and different things, so I hope you'll come out and check out Adobe Live. And then I'll also be in Amsterdam, June 20th and 21st at Adobe Live. It's actually just outside Amsterdam. It's in, boy, I'm going to say the name of this, and we're going to get all kinds of emails. It looks like Norwegian. Netherlands?
Norwegian.
Norwegian.
Like yeah.
I'm sure that we'll
That's
get plenty of
probably not
emails
even close.
with pronunciations, but send audio files, because if you just type back that, I'll mispronounce it again. But go check that out. You can find the information about the Netherlands event at adobe.nl/special/live. So I hope you'll check that out. And that's coming up here next month.
Awesome. I'm sure all our European friends will look forward to seeing you there. Well, folks, stick around, because after this, we're going to have all of our usual stuff, a tutorial from Scott, some contests, all the normal stuff, the news. So stick with us. We'll be right back on Adobe Photoshop TV. All right, we're back on Adobe Photoshop TV. I'm Dave Cross with Scott Kelby. And in a moment, we're going to send you to our regular feature of the news. But before we do that, we thought we'd just mention the fact that Scott has just started a very successful online training course.
It's true. A 21-day online course is called Photoshop for Digital Photographers. And the course basically is 5 minutes every day. You can just jump on, start today. You can start today, you can start tomorrow, you can start any day you want. And it's just a whole lot of fun. We're going to be doing everything from the raw workflow to JPEG. And if you haven't shot RAW before, don't worry about it. I have files you can download. And it's a whole lot of fun. So I hope you'll join me. Go to photoshoptraining.com. The classes are starting right now. In fact, they start when you sign up.
Whenever you sign up, that's your first day. Right?
Absolutely. All right, well, it's time to go to Matt Kloskowski, who's standing by in the Photoshop Action News Center, where news comes first.
It's Photoshop news from the Action News Storm Team with Matt Kloskowski. He's rocking the house key.
This week's news is brought to you by Peach Pit Press. If you go to peachpit.com/Photoshop TV, you'll find that each week they put a book up there for you. You get 30% off of that book. You also get free shipping in the U.S., so go check it out at peachpit.com. Okay, so first up, over at Layers Magazine, which is the how-to magazine for everything Adobe, they're actually adding a new column into the magazine, so you want to go check it out. If you're a Flash user, there's going to be a brand new column in there specifically geared toward Flash. So it's over at layersmagazine.com. Also, a couple of Adobe Macromedia news. First off, the Adobe website got an entire facelift. So Adobe and Macromedia have merged. If you go to adobe.com, you'll see that there's kind of a little bit of both sites in there. But what's even better about it, go to adobe.com and go to /newsletter, and you'll see a newsletter called The Edge. So it used to be Macromedia Edge, but now it's the Adobe Edge newsletter. So a lot of cool stuff in there, a lot of good creative articles and whatnot that you can read through. Finally, the registration for Photoshop World in Las Vegas is open. If you go to photoshopworld.com, you can register for the conference. It's going to be at the Mandalay Bay from September 7th through the 9th. You will find me at the craps tables or teaching Photoshop, one of the two there. But go check it out. It's over at photoshopworld.com. That's it for the news. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks, Matt, for the Photoshop breaking news. And Matt, unfortunately, will not be here for the rest of the show. He was hurt in an unfortunate accident on the news set.
Yeah, terrible. Disfiguring.
Disfiguring. So, no, actually, Matt had to catch a flight, but he will be here next week. But he was kind enough to stick it out as long as he could before he literally had to grab his stuff and run to the airport. But again, he will be back next week. All right, I want to move right on to my tutorial. My tutorial's, I don't want to say it's an involved one. It's a little bit of a long one, but it's one of those things where if you do a little bit of planning up front, it's going to save you a ton of time. And I got this actually from the Photoshop TV blogs. Now, we read these all the time, and if you haven't been to our blog, it's at photoshoptv.com. It's a place where you can post your comments about the show and ask questions. Now, we get literally thousands of questions each month, and of course, unfortunately, if you don't get an answer back from us, it's not because we don't want to answer your questions, just because of the volume of questions that we get. But every once in a while we get a chance to show one here on the show, and we read every single blog post ourselves, and we read them multiple times a day, probably more times than we should. And so your comments are very, very important to us. And this one comes right off the blog. The question was, how do I add a watermark, a visible watermark to my photos? I'm going to do that, but then I'm going to take it to the second step. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to actually add a batch processing to this that makes the whole process where you only have to do it once to one photo, then you can apply it to a whole folder of photos and have Photoshop do all the work for you. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Here's the photo that we're going to use. It's actually a picture I took just a couple of days ago of my daughter Kira. And she's smiling here and laughing because this is how she looks right after we give her a beer. She just loves a big, really frosty. No, I'm just kidding. We don't give the baby beer.
Of course not.
Mostly wine. She really likes. You give her beer, she's furious. No, don't send any emails about parenting. We don't give her beer or wine. It's mostly just root beer. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start off by adding the watermark. Now, this takes multiple steps. It's one of those things that takes a couple of different steps. So rather than having you open up every photograph and do all these steps, instead we're going to make things easy from the very start. We're going to go under the window menu and open the Actions palette. The Actions palette is Photoshop's tape recorder, that anytime you're getting ready to do something that's kind of tedious, that you know you're going to do again and again and again, go ahead and write an action. Then you can have Photoshop do the work for you from that point on. So we'll start by hitting the little new action button, and we'll type in add watermark. And then we're going to, this is very important, assign this to a function key in your keyboard so you can just invoke this little recording by hitting a key. We're going to hit F11 and the command key. So when I press command F11 on a Mac, it would be control F11 on a PC. It's going to run this action called add watermark. And if you notice, it doesn't say OK, it says record. Because when I click this, it's now recording my steps. You see the little red record light or a little button right there going. All right, here we go. So here's how you create your watermark. First, add a new blank layer. Then you're going to go over here and grab the custom shape tool. It's right here under the T, all the way at the bottom, the custom shape tool. Now, two little preps you have to do. Prep number one, go up here to the options bar and click on the third icon up here. See the little icons? The first icon gives you a shape layer, which is the default. The second icon pretends you drew the shape with the pen tool. The third icon just gives you regular old pixels just like always. All right. So that's the first prep. The second prep is go over here to these shapes. There's all these different shapes, but you want to choose the one that looks like the copyright symbol. All right, so we're going to click on that. We'll move the actions palette out of the way. And on this new layer, I'm going to draw a little copyright symbol. All right, then we're going to just type in with the type tool the name of my studio here, Kelby Studios. And we'll just position this where we want it, something like that. Now let's click off that, and I'm going to merge these two layers together. I'm going to merge the type layer with the shape layer. And do you notice while I'm doing all this, the little recorder's keeping track of everything that I do? So we're going to merge these two together. Just press Command E on a Mac or Control E on a PC, and they merge together. Now, to give them kind of a highlight effect, I'm going to go and choose Bevel and Emboss from the little Layer Styles pop-up menu here. And when it pops up, I'm just going to use the default settings and click OK. See how it gave a little highlight and shadow? The reason why we need to do this is because when I'm going to change the blend mode now from normal to lighten, and you'll just see the edges that the bevel created. And lastly, I think that's a bit strong for a watermark. You want people to be able to see the photo, so I'm just going to lower the opacity. I'm going to type in the number 3 to lower the opacity to 30%. And if you think that's a little too light, you might maybe go 40. Either one of those is fine. And now we're going to merge these two together just by going to flatten the image. Okay, so we'll just go and choose from the pop-up menu here, flatten image. Now go back to your actions palette and hit the stop button. That's it. That's the last time you have to go through those steps because you were smart enough to create an action at the very beginning. Now, I always recommend testing your action before you do anything. So let's close this image and reopen shot of little baby Kira. Baby! Here she comes. All right, there she is. Now, let's press that little, let's close the actions palette. We're going to press that little shortcut. It was Command F11, right? Let's go ahead and plus Command F11 and watch in a few seconds. Boom.
Look at that.
There is the,
In a fly.
and it's so fast because it does it faster than you could ever do it yourself. Now, let's close that. Here's where the fun begins. Now, let's say that you have a whole folder of photos like I do that I took of my daughter. And we're going to go under here and we're going to choose... excuse me, we're not going to choose open. We're going to go under the automate menu and choose batch. This is where it gets crazy. Now, go up under here batch and make sure that your action's chosen. There it is. Add watermark. Now you're going to say, what folder do I want to run this on? So go choose the folder that you want it on. I'm going to go to my desktop, over here to Photoshop TV 1, and there's the folder I want there, a folder of Kira shots. I only put in just a few shots so you don't have to wait all day while this does it. Choose that folder. And then for your destination, you're going to choose Save and Close. So this is what it's going to do, just to give you an overview. It is going to open that folder of photos. It's going to run the Add Watermark, and it's going to save and close every one of those images. So when I click OK, watch what happens. You click OK, opens the photo, adds the watermark, boom, it's done. Look how fast it's all happening, and I'm not speeding this up or anything.
And you could walk away at this point, right? Because you're not doing anything. You're just, it's doing all the work for you.
You absolutely could, if you have a really slow machine. But if you have a fast machine.
If you had hundreds of images,
yes,
you
if
might
you have
walk
hundreds
away.
we only have like 7, so you'd walk away and Dave would go, come back. Okay, so basically it's done. I'm going to go open up that folder full of images here. Let me find out where they are on my desktop so you can see. Here they are right here. And if we were to go and open these images now, you would see, and we'll go ahead and do just that, by the way. We'll open up those images, and you can see that every one of these photos now will have that watermark. Well, at least I hope they do, where this whole thing is pretty much shot. Nope, there they are. Here they are. There they are, action photos. All right, so there we have a little batching and the whole 9 yards put together. All righty, so again, that's taken right off the blog. So if you want to go by photoshoptv.com, put your comments there. We read every single one of them. We delete most of them. No, I'm just kidding. All right, we're going to take a short break. Mr. Cross, is that correct?
We are, and we're going to have another message from one of our sponsors, so we'll be right back on Adobe Photoshop TV. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back, and I'm Scott Kelby. Of course, here's Dave Cross.
Hello again.
And we have a special guest in the studio. My son Jordan is joining us today because he has a Photoshop tip for you, actually a camera raw tip for us to do today. So we're going to go ahead and do that before we go on to the rest of the cool stuff that we have. So Jordan, let's go ahead and do your tip. Here's tip is in camera raw. We're in camera raw right here. And who's this a picture of, by the way?
My sister Kira.
Yeah, all right, there we go. So another little baby Kira shot snuck in once again. All right, and Jordan's tip is actually one that even Mr. Cross didn't know.
That is correct.
So it's kind of a navigation tip inside of Camera Raw. Okay, so what's the tip?
It's how to switch between the tabs using the keyboard shortcut.
Aha, very good. Okay, and so you mean these tabs right here, right? These little
Yes.
things? Okay, so I'm just clicking on them here, but there's a keyboard shortcut. So what's the keyboard shortcut to move through the tabs?
It's Option Command 2, 3, 4, 5
And how do you get back to the first one?
is Option Command 1.
Oh,
Nice.
sweet. Yeah,
I'm gonna
good
write
tip.
that down.
All right, yeah,
Very cool.
let's write that down. All right, great. And Jordan, you shoot a Nikon D7D. Do you shoot in JPEG or RAW?
RAW plus JPEG.
Sweet. All right, you're filling up those cards. All right, well, thanks, little buddy. I appreciate you doing a tip
job.
for us. All right, it's contest time. And
Right.
first, we're going to talk to Mr. Cross and find out what was last week's contest.
Right. Last week's question actually was, in what dialog do you work with image zones? And the answer is in picture package. When you customize the layout, you
right.
work with these things called image zones. And right now we will tell you via graphic, the winner of last week's contest was... there he is, the lucky person that won that week's contest. And we also have a contest for this week, as we always do, with some prizes.
All right, we've got some prizes. First, we've got Matt Kloskowski's Photoshop CS2 Speed Clinic book. Now, you know, I did that little tutorial on batch processing earlier. There's an entire chapter in Matt's book on batch processing. So if you're into that kind of stuff, make sure you catch his book. He will sign this copy for you, so you'll win that. What else do they win, Jordan?
They will also win one of my dad's DVDs.
That's right. It's Photoshop CS2 Power Session by Jordan's dad. And they'll also win a 1-year subscription to Layers Magazine, the how-to magazine for everything Adobe. So if you haven't got Layers Magazine, of course, it's available on newsstands nationwide and in various and sundry locations around the world on newsstands. But you can also go to layersmagazine.com.
Right.
All right, what's this week's question,
This week's
Mr. Cross?
question is, I'm going to show you a graphic right now, and you have to name this dialog box. So name this, the missing part that's on the top of this dialog box. What is it? And to enter, go to photoshoptv.com, and on the right-hand side, you'll see a little link that says Enter Contest. And you put in your entry, and you could win these fabulous prizes.
Well, fantastic. Well, we have got, every week we try to give you 3 different little projects to do between this week's show and next week's show, so you're not bored all the time, like 9-year-olds sometimes are.
Hey.
Sorry.
You know, I'm sitting right here.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize that. Okay, so, I didn't expect that. We have 3 projects for you. Let's see, Mr. Cross, start us off with a project.
I have a project to go to a website called pixeladdiction.com. It's a wonderful website where you can enter contests. There's all sorts of weekly challenges where they give you a photo and you make your best entry. And there's also a nice discussion forum and some tutorials.
Excellent. My project is going to be one that comes off our blogs. On the blog this week, I've been reading people saying again and again, hey, I like your show. It's a lot of fun. I wish you guys did something like that for Illustrator or for InDesign or for Go Live or the other Creative Suite projects. Unfortunately, we pretty much have our hands full with this on our day jobs and our writing and things like that. However, there is a very, very good podcast already out there, and it's from our friend Terry White. Now, his name actually is not Terry White. It's just Terry White. But it's a great podcast. He does a great job. And for instance, I'm on his podcast website right now, and within just the last few days, he's done using PDF and print presets in InDesign CS2, layer comps in Photoshop, creating a QuickTime slideshow in Go Live, colorize your grayscale images in Illustrator. He's got everything in here. Learn to use object styles. It's a terrific free podcast. I would give you the web address, but it is probably the longest web address in the world. Go to the iTunes Music Store and subscribe to it. You can find it there, and it's a free podcast. Terry does a great job with it, and of course we'll also post the very long link on the Photoshop TV website to Terry's podcast, so you can catch that there. And Mr. Cross, you have one more for us?
I do have one more. Now, Matt mentioned this last week in the news, but Microsoft is having a photo contest for aspiring student photographers, so go to Microsoft.com/Pro-Photo and you'll find a link to their aspiring photography contest with prizes up to $5,000, so well worth checking out if you're a student photographer.
$5,000. Well, guys, that's it for this week's episode of Adobe Photoshop TV. I want to thank our special in-studio guest, my son Jordan.
Thanks.
And Mr. Dave Cross.
Thank you, and I see you again.
And the missing Matt Kloskowski. My name is Scott Kelby. We will see you guys next week for another episode of Adobe Photoshop TV. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Adobe Photoshop TV. See you next week.